The YouTube algorithm seems to have wiped Steven Crowder off the face of the earth, but that didn't stop me from checking in on him and seeing what he's talking about nowadays. And his guest said something quite interesting, or this is his co-host. I'm just going to let him say his thing about 60% enriched uranium. I think it's quite interesting, and we can make good historical comparisons with what he's going to say right now.
But what do you do with 60% enrichment of uranium?
Yeah.
When you keep increasing it? According to the IAEA report that came out, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Because 3 to 5% is, I believe, for power generation. You can go up to about 20% for a lot of medical and research. There are some very, very limited uses that I doubt are happening in Iran to go above that. But what do you do with 60%? We're not just making this up out of nowhere.
Well, no, and here's the thing is, and again, Tucker would be welcome to come on and make the case. His justification.
All right, I'll make the case for Tucker why we shouldn't be worrying about 60% enriched uranium that the Iran has, and that's a matter of fact. They do have 60% enriched uranium. The IAEA has found some loose particles of 84% enriched uranium outside their nuclear sites and in environmental tests. But the IAEA also said in those cases, Iran provided plausible explanations that they were simply variations in the machinery that they were using to make their 60%. And there's also some remnants of their past nuclear program that they've yet to account for. So those are the cases where we're going past 60% enriched uranium. But for now, Iran does not have a kilogram of above 60% enriched uranium. For now. But why do I not worry about 60% enriched uranium? It's the same thing as Saddam Hussein was doing, right? Saddam Hussein, there's a reason he was so ambiguous before the 2003 as to whether or not he had WMDs. He would come out publicly and say, we do not have WMDs, and then he would be very kind of non-compliant with inspections. He would make it seem awfully suspicious as if he had WMDs. And this was to kind of reach a middle ground where, in the Middle East, all of these nations have adversaries and they have to seem strong, but also they don't want to piss off the West, right? They don't want to make the IAEA and the UN and America and Europe mad that they are nuclearizing or have WMDs, so they find this middle ground where it makes them seem strong, like Iran seems strong because they have 60% enriched uranium, but then again, they don't have a weapons program, so it also appeases the other side. So we're kind of having to play this both sides game, where Iran wants to seem strong to its adversaries and weak at the same time in the eyes of the IAEA and people who are against nuclearization. Also, 60% enriched uranium is a fraction of what you need to build a bomb. This is very, very important. You need a weapons program to build a bomb. That ended in 2003. Weapons program, it's so much harder to do than simply spinning uranium, right? That's not very complicated. What is complicated is designing a warhead and making it fit on a missile and doing all the testing that you have to do, and actually making it work. That can take years, and that intelligence is not necessarily shared even between allies. So they would have to figure out a lot of that themselves, which they tried to do in 1999 and 2003, and it's pretty ambiguous as to how far exactly they got. But we recovered documents that they did discover some stuff, and they had some capabilities. But for now, those capabilities are not being worked on. Same thing with the ICBMs, right? All the ICBM stuff is dual use. They have SLVs. They have an SLV program which launches satellites into space, and that uses similar technology to what is being used to create ICBM. So Netanyahu comes out and says Iran has an ICBM program, as he does because he's a psychotic liar, as I keep saying. But no, they have an SLV program to make them seem tough. Like, we could do an ICBM program if we want, but the United States estimate said that if they want to transfer their SLV program into the ICM program, they're going to get that done by 2035. So the whole what's stopping Iran from bombing Los Angeles argument that I seem to hear on Fox News every day is idiotic. You have two programs, ICBM and nuclear warhead programs, that need to happen before that happens. And ICBMs are a lot more complicated. So that's why I don't worry about 60% enriched uranium. One, it has to be weaponized. Two, it's Iran just trying to seem strong. That's the same thing as Saddam Hussein did. He doesn't want the West to think that he has WMDs, but he also doesn't want to be completely subservient to their adversaries and be a country that Israel can just say, oh, let's do regime change here. They're super weak. Let's do whatever we want. Like, they're kind of accepting some kind of subserviency to the West, which is the kind of dynamic that's prevailing right now in the Middle East, because China and Russia are not getting that involved, which they shouldn't. I think they're very smart to do that. But that's why this talking point is not the smoking gun that people think it is. It's pretty much the only arrow in the quiver for people like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder. 60% enriched uranium, like, what are you going to do with that? Well, if your adversaries are saying, threatening regime change willy-nilly, like, shouldn't we have something to deter them? We don't want a full nuclear bomb, because that's a kind of scary. We understand why it's scary, but we're not just going to lay down and take it. That's the middle ground. 60% enriched uranium is a perfect middle ground. And Saddam Hussein had its other middle ground, which was ambiguity and kind of being non-compliant with tests. So that's what I think about this. Steven Crowder, I don't know. I think that he is entirely just disingenuous. I like that he puts his sources. I appreciate that. And I think he's funny, but that's about it.